Well, I think it's time to get started. So good morning, everyone. I'm George Swift of the Chamber Southwest, and we're glad to have all of you here today for the first of our two town hall meetings sponsored by the Chamber Southwest as part of the U.S. Chamber's Inequality of Opportunity initiative. The Chamber Southwest is one of over 500 chambers and business organizations.
Now I'm hearing George.
Okay, hold on, because we're trying to get your face up.
And we're going to have some folks here in just a minute joining us. But today, due to the current coronavirus pandemic, we're unable to have large gatherings. So we're conducting these town halls virtually. And we thank you for joining us at this time. Our first town hall is a panel of outstanding community leaders to help us identify issues that are barriers to opportunity to African Americans and people of color. And the four general areas of our concentration will be education, entrepreneurship, employment, and criminal justice reform. And today, on our first town hall, we're going to deal with education and entrepreneurship. And our second town hall will be August 5th at 10 a.m. and we'll delve into employment and criminal justice reform. Our town halls have been supported by our Business Development and Inclusion Task Force of the Chamber, and we want to thank our task force for their support. Well, why are we doing this? The tragic death of George Floyd sparked worldwide demonstrations and support for Black Lives Matter movement. And issues of inequality of opportunity have come out and been highlighted. And it's important for the business community to address these issues and help craft solutions. All Americans should have the opportunity to earn their success, rise on their own merit, and live their own American dream. But far too often, the opportunity to obtain an education, secure a job, start a business, and provide for your family is determined by the color of your skin. And these systemic inequalities hurt individuals, communities, our economy, and our society. Our public and private solutions are needed to bridge the underlying racial divides that contribute to broader systemic inequalities in our society. And after our town halls, we're going to invite you that are listening to send us your comments and questions. And these town halls will focus on identifying issues and obstacles in education, entrepreneurship, employment, and criminal justice reform. And we will compile these issues, and we will turn them over to our task force for study and determination what our next steps will be as part of the solution. And we want to be a catalyst for impact on public policy and private sector solutions. And now let us begin our first sector. We're going to have in our first panel, Dr. Marcus Jackson from the Calcasieu Parish School Board, R3 Zone Director of Curriculum and Instruction, substituting for Judge Gene Thibodeaux, who had a conflict, and he was instrumental in founding the charter schools in our area. We have Father Henry Mancuso, who is Executive Secretary for the Board of Trustees of the Charter Schools of Lake Charles. And we have Velika Hurst-Trahan, who is with us as a community volunteer and a parent. So thanks to all of our panelists for being with us today. As we begin, let's see if we can get Father Mancuso on. Father Mancuso, are you with us this morning?
I can see you and hear you.
Okay, we can't see you, but we will carry on as best we can. And let's begin first with Dr. Jackson. You're overseeing a program to improve what we call the failing schools. And when we say failing schools, what criteria do we use? What exactly does that mean? And you can, we need you to unmute, please.
Done.
There we go.
Yes. Failing schools is actually simply the grades that are actually mandated by the state, that are actually given by the state. And grades K through 8 There's only one particular criteria, which is the state assessment. However, in high schools, there are actually 4 different components. There are several different components, including the end of year assessment. But that is what categorizes a failing school. And you had needed to be in that failing school with the DRNF for 3 consecutive years to be considered a failing school.
Well, when we talk about that, what are some of the reasons that you've identified that these schools are failing? What are the big issues that you're facing?
Well, a couple things we've actually noticed from the beginning was an actual consistent curriculum. Within the 14 schools, well, Washington, Marion, and LaGrange is off the list now because they had 2 consecutive years. Washington, Marion went from a D to a B, and LaGrange have had a C for 2 consecutive years, so they're actually off the list. But one of the things we actually noticed immediately was an actual curriculum around all of the schools. That has been rectified, and that has been proven to be enormous in regards to our growth. We have 38% transient rate, meaning that our students transfer from school to school, specifically our elementary school students, at least once or twice throughout the school year. And what was found was that we had different curriculums at each school. Now we have a tier 1 curriculum at each school. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually been to a school or observing a lesson or observing the teacher, and the child said, we did that, we read that at my other school. So that meant a lot. So that was huge there. And secondly, teacher training, professional development for teachers around the training, around the curriculum and the content. Those were the 2 big areas that we've been able to rectify within our first 2 years. This is a 3-year project. And we've seen some enormous growth in all of our schools. And we did not take the state assessment. And I received 27 calls this spring. 13 of those calls were from students from 5th grade to 8th grade asking me, are we going to take our state assessment? So that gives you an idea of just the growth that we've made, where the students wanted to show everybody we can do this.
Well, Father Mancuso, tell us about the charter schools. Why were they founded, and what impact do you think they're having on our education?
I think.
There we go. I think we have you unmuted now.
Charter schools was to. I'm going to. Getting a lot of feedback here.
Right. I think you're on twice, so there you go.
Is that better, George?
Yes, that's good. Please go ahead.
And I need to be unmuted I'm using my telephone for the sound and the computer for the screen.
Okay. So can you tell us about the charter schools and why they were founded and what impact you think they're having? I think we've lost Father Mancuso for the time being. Well, Velika, let's go to you. As a parent, tell us about your experience with your children. I think you've had children in both public and the charter schools. Give us some of your observations.
Well, I have had children in both the charter school and also Calcasieu Parish School Board, school system as well. But I'm glad to hear what Dr. Marcus Jackson has said as far as the improvement, because as easy as we want to make it just one aspect of it, there's several layers to this onion that we called education, and having those measures in effect to where you can effectively reach a student, which I want to hear more mentorship as far as with the teachers go. And also my concern is we're not waiting until kids get to kindergarten for us to be effective, but having that birth to pre-K legislation push, so that way we don't have to miss out on certain opportunities, and also make it easier to level the playing field for everybody involved.
All right. And Father Mancuso, we now can see you. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you very well.
Great. All right, we're getting a little feedback again, but let's try it again and tell us about the charter schools and why they were founded and what your impact might be.
The main reason to start, oh wow.
Yep, I think we're having a little technical problem.
Let me do this. Are we okay now?
Well, you're getting a lot of feedback, but let's try it. Go ahead and we'll see how it's going.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yes.
The main reason we started was to allow for educational choice, believing that students, regardless of where they live, needed to have the opportunity to make a choice, that many folks could afford to go to private school, whether it be Hamilton Christian, St. Louis, or one of the other Catholic schools, but a lot of people simply could not afford it or they didn't have transportation. So the charter schools allowed for choice. I agree with Dr. Jackson that we certainly need to have a consistent curriculum, and making or requiring all of our schools to be at tier 1 is the most significant thing to be able to do. And so I wholeheartedly support him and his efforts in Calcasieu Parish, as we've tried to do, to make sure we're at tier 1 and nothing else is acceptable. And as I was hearing Ms. Hurst say, and I remember Velika for many years and working with her, is that we need to recognize that many students who come to kindergarten are already 8 to 9 months behind their peers when they're coming from families that are socially or economically disadvantaged. And primarily that's from the minority community. That if they enter kindergarten already 8 months behind in reading, in particular, that gap, the inequality gap, the inequity gap, just gets exacerbated. One practical example, in 2014, when we started our high school, we had 110 freshmen who came to us from 5 different schools in Calcasieu Parish, feeder schools, 8th grade. Out of those 110 freshmen, 10 of them, almost 10%, were reading at the 6th grade or below level. 3 of those students were reading on the 3rd grade level. So here they're reading at the 3rd grade level, and we want them to be ready for Algebra 1. We want them to be ready for physical science, and it is just impossible. And I think more and more, we're going to see even an impact of COVID-19 on this inequality. And we call it the summer slide, where students lose some of their knowledge during the summertime. I think we're going to see a COVID-19 slide, particularly with the families that don't have adequate access to books and to technology. And so that's what we've tried to address in the charter schools. I think the first thing Dr. Jackson identified is that curriculum. The second thing is to truly say, one of our goals is to close the gap, that we recognize there's an educational inequity and there's an equality gap. And one of our goals is to reduce it as a second key component we need to do.
Well, that was a good introduction, and it leads into some of the facts that were gathered by the U.S. Chamber. And talking about that, they mentioned that racial disparities in learning began even before the formal schooling, just as you talked about. And on the reading level, only 1 in 5 Black 4th graders are reading on grade level, compared to half of the white students. Just 14% of Black 8th graders are on grade level in mathematics, 20% below the rate for all students combined. Dr. Jackson, does that kind of fit in with what you're running into here in Southwest Louisiana?
Yes, absolutely. And it's actually not just in Southwest Louisiana. It's a nationwide problem, and it has been for some time. One of the things that I've actually noticed is that teachers are not prepared to actually teach students how to read. Think about it. If you look at our at the collegiate level, an early elementary education teacher only has to take one reading course, Foundations of Reading, in order to be certified. You graduate, and now you're placed in the classroom, and you are not, you do not have the knowledge. So it's imperative that school systems give the teachers the knowledge to teach students how to decode, how to properly teach fluency, which leads to comprehension. Now you can analyze and things of that nature, but students usually matriculate from grade to grade without having those skills. And as the Ms. Hurst actually stated, that starts long before the student gets to school. That actually starts in the womb. There's research that shows a mother that's reading to her child, reading to your child while they're young, before they even get to pre-K, does an enormous amount of work in regards to students' ability to comprehend and things of that nature. But yes, that's a major, major issue as it relates to literacy. And now, as Mr. Henry actually stated, not only do you have the literacy issue now, but you have the digital divide as well. So you got a literacy divide and a digital divide now, and that has gone to another level now that our students have missed the last 9 weeks of school.
Velika, as you look again from a parent's perspective in the early childhood education, what do you think is needed to help equalize the children when they begin kindergarten, first grade?
Well, I know this is, it has been talked about before, but there is actually, we can actually get the legislation behind this to do the funding for those birth to pre-K 3, because you have it for pre-K 4, you have it for pre-K 5 already in the system, and that the funding's for it. But if you have to give the birth to pre-K 5, totally funded, because that's the only way this is going to change. Because you have those daycares that needs the funding to get that in their curriculum as well too. So that's the only way it's going to be done. But as Dr. Jackson said, as far as mentorship in the classrooms, because yes, teachers are already stressed out enough, and knowing that, to hear they didn't have to take the assessment test this year, but that's tied to how that's tied to their performance review, or anything that's going on in that classroom and retention wise. But if you have it to where you have maybe retired teachers come in and mentor those others, the new teachers that's coming in, and then maybe that can kind of help to say, okay, this is what really worked. But also trying to find out ways to effectively maximize the classroom time and not have it to where teachers are just overworked.
Let's talk about neighborhoods. That seems to be a big issue, particularly in North Lake Charles, where a lot of these schools are located. It's kind of the chicken or the egg, I would think, that you can't have the neighborhoods remain stable or grow if you don't have a school there, and the schools can't grow if the neighborhood's not growing. So Dr. Jackson and Father Henry, would y'all comment on the neighborhood and the impact that schools have and what you're seeing now? Dr. Jackson, let's start with you.
Okay. I'm actually from North Lake Charles. I actually went to Riverside Elementary School. I remember every single teacher there and the impact that they had on my life. Then I went to Molo, and I graduated from Washington Marion High School. And to be honest with you, as it relates to community, personally, I think we failed, and as my generation have failed. Last year, they had several deaths in the North Lake Charles area, and it involved 4 students that I actually mentored. at Washington Marion. And it was on a Saturday afternoon. It was a rainy Saturday afternoon. And I went outside and I actually just wrote down everybody that was instrumental in my life and me becoming the person that I am from North Lake Charles. And I stopped when I got to 184 people. That's how, as a community, everybody knew me and had an impact on my life. Currently, right now, if you would go up to a child and actually ask them, could you name me 5 adults in your neighborhood that loves you, that cares about you, you probably wouldn't get 3 names. And that's a tremendous impact on our children, specifically their social emotional needs. There's no sense of community anymore. Of course, now, due to the No Child Left Behind legislation, many of our students have left the neighborhoods and they go to the charter school, they go to Barb, Sam Houston, et cetera. And there's thousands of students who actually just simply have left their neighborhood, and they usually don't come back together unless it's Washington Marion's homecoming, which you can expect about 5,000 people to be at the parade and about 4,000 at the game. But that's critical to everything that involves the intricacies of the school system and the school that's in that particular neighborhood. I've preached over and over and over again, in order for a school to be ran effectively, they must have 5 Ps in place. And those 5 Ps are the parents, the people in that community, the pastors in that community, the politicians working together, and the personnel within the schools. And so I am working with those 5 Ps right now to actually bring that sense of community back together.
Father Henry, tell us about the geographic area that the charter schools serve and any residency requirements or anything like that.
The charter schools actually charter schools actually serve the entire Calcasieu Parish area, you know, and the high school can serve the 5 civil parishes in our area. And so we have no real geographical boundaries in reality. And so all are welcome to register, you know, in our 3 schools. I want to go back to, you know, to what Dr. Jackson just said too. His 5 Ps are excellent. And when the parents can't do it, the rest of the community is going to have to step up, including, you know, the organizations, including the pastors and the churches. You know, there are many book lists that are very popular, 50 books that children should read before the age of 5. You know, I have a niece who's a single parent raising 2 children. She benefits from services like Southwest Louisiana Center for Health Services, SNAP. And so the rest of the family has had to step up to make sure my 6-year-old great nephew has those 50 books. You know, we really need to get these other folks to recognize, as Ms. Hurst has said, it has to start before the child gets to pre-K. And so, as Dr. Jackson said, you know, that we need to be able to pull everybody together. And some things that are very traditional, very old, can also be very beneficial. You know, the accelerated reader program has worked so well, and it's old-fashioned. It's old-fashioned. It's not modern technology, but it works so well. We don't want to throw out everything that's old simply because it's old. You know, we've got to continue to focus on those very early grades while we deal with high school students, you know, who are behind. So I hope I've answered your question. Our geographical boundaries, you know, are large, you know, and we're nearing capacity, you know, at our schools. Lake Charles Charter Academy is full. The high school will be full this year until our new facility is completed in February. And really only the school on East McNeese has room, you know, to register people. It saddens me when we lose neighborhood schools. I was at Sacred Heart for 10.5 years. When that school closed, it made me very, very sad. that we lost that particular neighborhood school. Hard to build housing, you know, for people. Now I work for an organization that's got 4 acres right across Cambrai-Fondel. I want Cambrai-Fondel to succeed. I could build 23 houses right across the street on that 4 acres of land on Fitzenrider Road. But people are going to want that school to be strong, and I believe and hope that, you know, the reconfiguration efforts are going to cause that to happen. You know, the school board tried, some members of the school board also tried to look at some different zoning opportunities. That's tough questions to deal with. But to save some of the schools in North Lake Charles, we may have to look at some zoning issues and changing district lines to be able to support the schools in North Lake Charles so that we don't have to continue to reconfigure or close those school facilities.
Well, all of you have given us some good insight. Unfortunately, our time is short, but to wrap it up, could you identify what you think the business community could do to help our schools, and in particular the failing schools? And I know that's a long question, but if you could give us about just kind of a headline of what you think we could focus on as the business organization at the Chamber. Velika, would you like to kick it off?
I go back to early childhood education. We have to start at birth. We cannot wait until they get into kindergarten and say, okay, let's start here, because that's where we fail everybody. So we have to start at birth, and legislation is in place to get that done.
Dr. Jackson?
Yes, and George, I'll be actually reaching out to you and your organization. I actually met with the team of teachers and district officials yesterday. And with this, now that we're going digital, I don't think we'll ever go back. We will never leave the digital piece. Many of our students need accommodations, and they need to be read to, specifically in the early grades, and even students in grades 3, 4, and 5. So yesterday afternoon, we came here and we had a stack of books. So I'll be reaching out to our business leaders and our stakeholders to actually do some read alouds for our students and record their voices. And can you imagine how the confidence level is going to rise when some of those students are being read to from the mayor, are being read to from yourself, and they see the entire Lake Charles community actually reading to them and concerned about their education? We're actually in the midst of an educational revolution. And if we get this thing right, our schools and our students will go to another level.
Thank you. Father Henry, quick wrap up.
Much the same thing. You know, as Dr. Jackson referred to the research that talks about reading to children even within the womb. You know, too often businesses see us coming to them asking them for money. We need passionate business people and volunteers to come in and really read one-on-one to kids. Let's not assume that's happening in the home. And then also to give a kid a book. You know, read the book, give the books away. A kid can go home with a book, and it becomes a treasure to so many of them. But let's address it from the beginning by recognizing there is an inequality gap, and it starts early. And let's begin working on that, you know, as a business community.
Well, I want to thank all of you for taking time and your knowledge and observations. This has been very helpful. We would like to thank Dr. Marcus Jackson of the Calcasieu Parish School Board, the R3 Zone Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And at the last minute, substituting for Judge Jean Thibodeaux is Father Henry Mancuso of the Charter Schools, and Velika Hurst-Trahan, who is a community volunteer and a parent. We want to thank all of you for being with us today. And now we're going to shift over to another panel. So we will say goodbye to our first panel, and we will go to the others in just one moment as we bring in our next panelist. I'll go ahead and introduce them. We have with us the chair of the Business Development and Inclusion Task Force, Mr. Ernie Broussard, who's going to serve as our moderator. You see Mr. Adrian Wallace, Adrian is the Executive Director of the Southwest Louisiana Business Incubator here at the Seed Center. And we hope to have a couple of business owners joining us in just a moment. And so we will wait until they arrive. And so while we're waiting, here we go. All right, I believe we have Mr. Ernie Broussard with us. Ernie, in addition to being chair of our committee, is the senior executive with Fugro, which is a geotech and material testing company, a large organization. And of course, Ernie's had a long time relationship here in Southwest Louisiana in many capacities in the economic development line. We also have Mark Senegal, a business owner, joining us, and we may have another panelist coming in. So, Ernie, can you take it away?
Good, guys. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We don't see you, though.
I don't know why. Matter of fact, here it is. Am I live now?
There you are.
There we go. Thank you. Well, good morning.
Senegal is with us. So, all right.
Well, good morning to everyone.
Okay.
Good morning to everyone. And George, thank you so much for a great opportunity to hear the discussion in the earlier town hall. I think it stands to reason that we are in such trying times right now that, and while it is on one hand regrettable that we have to have this narrative, but I think it's so important for us to continue the mission that the Chamber has endorsed to promote, educate, and to carry the message of the value of inclusion and diversity. So again, good morning to all. Matter of fact, is Mr. Senegal with us?
Yes, I am.
Very good. Is Mr. Wallace with us?
I am here. Yes, sir.
Adrian, good morning to you as well. And what about our good friend and colleague, John Walker? Okay, John is a bit off the radar for now. I'm sure that he will join us at his earliest opportunity. But gentlemen, in the spirit of time and brevity, let's initiate our briefing as we discuss what has become a centerpiece in the development and in the life cycle of not only the communities, but it seems that the nation as a whole. My compliments to both of you for being very successful in the entrepreneurship and the business side of the community, as well, Adrian, your work with the incubator and some of the successes that you've underscored actually uniquely prepares both of you for this discussion. So, well, gentlemen, let me just commence our discussion by asking, what do you feel today is the overall sentiment among the minority community, both Black, Brown, and whatever, doing business in Southwest Louisiana? And when I say that, that's a qualitative question. Do you feel that there is good feelings, bad feelings, and different? And do you feel that there is a presence, if you will, on one way or the other? So, Mr. Wallace, I'll start with you, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Actually, I was going to defer to Mr. Senegal, who's on the ground all the time. But let me just start, first of all, by saying that I'm happy to have this opportunity. But let me begin by giving my contact information for those who are listening in. So if they want to follow up with a question or contact later on, feel free to do so. As many of us are, we're working remotely. So email is probably the best way to reach me, but it's awallace@alliance, SWLA.org, awallace@alliance, SWLA.org. So if anyone on this call wants to follow up, I'm happy to assist them. Briefly, what I'm hearing, what I'm observing, since the stay at home, I guess mid-March, I am receiving probably just as many, Mr. Broussard, if not more calls from people of various backgrounds, including minorities who are wanting to start a business or are looking for assistance with their business. So I say overall the climate is good. It's challenging, without a doubt. This is new landscape for many of us, but I guess I'm a hopeful person to begin with. What I think the challenges are just magnified to what they would normally experience. And it falls in a couple of areas such as access to capital. That's always a challenge, access to capital. How do they get affordable capital? And there's some programs, as you know, from the state with the Main Street program that can help some existing businesses. And then also, I would say, and I'm going to put this out because it's not talked about a lot, but from a minority business perspective, they want the opportunity to be able to do business. They have the capabilities many times, but they want the opportunity to be able to do business wherever it may be. And sometimes, we don't talk about this very often, but sometimes in some instances, minority businesses are not viewed as maybe as competent as another business. And I think that's an unfair representation. I say do business with them and treat them like any other business. If they're not delivering, then okay, they don't deliver. But at least give them the opportunity to prove themselves.
Okay. Mr. Senegal, would you like to follow up on that question?
Yeah, sure. Again, I'm happy to be a part and to have, my perspective heard and views heard on this particular issue. Like Mr. Wallace said, I'm on the ground floor a lot. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are inspiring to go in business. And just from what I'm picking up from the landscape, I think that we are in a unique time, of course. But I think that most of people, I'm noticing a lot of female business owners and entrepreneurs are looking at it as a landscape of opportunity. So it's inspiring to see that. I right now am working on a project business, sort of like an incubator or a plaza that's going to actually be a home to 5 minority women-owned business owners. So that's very encouraging, and it's going to be right in Lake Charles. And I've kind of seen myself with my experiences over 16, 17 years in business, being someone that was given an opportunity, was placed in this position, of course, divine intervention and God's always in my plans. But I was able to learn information, and now I'm able to give that information back to those would-be inspiring business owners. And what I'm doing right now is basically working as a consultant, an advisor, trying to limit them, the mistakes that I made early on, and trying to give them a better opportunity. And I just think in this point in time when you got people inspired, we're going to need more mentors. We're going to need more people on the ground floor, not necessarily holding their hands, but doing what the Seed Center does and doing what I'm trying to do as an individual. Just be accessible to them to give them the best opportunity to succeed. So I'm very, very excited, in spite of the climate, the energy that I'm receiving from all of the business owners that I've been in contact with over the last several months.
Mm-hmm. Very good, gentlemen. Let me pose the question from an empirical standpoint. This area has been blessed with a plethora of economic development opportunities, literally billions of dollars of announced projects, more than half of which are in the ground today. We have a national narrative that is ongoing right now that would suggest that although there was a need for set-asides and quotas per se, that there is a trend of reasoning that by the sheer presence of that has created maybe some animus and some antagonism, from the opposing sides. We've also heard that what it may suggest is that minorities cannot compete at the same level of the white counterparts, so they need a crutch. Now, personally, I would tell you that the set aside, my suggestion to you is that the set aside and the quotas and the incentive programs like that, I do not believe was intended to be a way of life. I think that it was done to change the narrative, if you will, and to change the dynamic, to bring people to the table to have opportunities that they did not have before. My question to you, to both of you, is that do you feel that the minority community collectively has participated at an even keel in the economic growth that we've had here? And I'm going to challenge you to tell me, and if not, what needs to happen? So, Mr. Senegal, as we alternate this, I'm going to defer to you first. Before you answer that, so has Mr. Walker joined us yet? Okay, silence is golden. Mr. Senegal, please proceed.
Yes, to try to expound on the question, I do feel that, you know, minorities and especially in the North Lake Charles community, which I'm very familiar with, have been willing to participate, have been wanting to be involved in the opportunities that is afforded to them through these different programs. But what I have noticed is the lack of understanding what I call group economics. I think as an individual, when you're practicing in our particular system, capitalism, and trying to be an inspiring business owner and own that American dream, when you're out there on your own, the weight of the world seems to be unbearable. But if you practice as a group and you pool your resources and you share your resources, I think together your strength is galvanized and you move forward and you see progression. And when you do go in the valley, you understand that that is also a part of the process. So I think that group economics and the understanding of how to socially interact with one another to be able to share information is it's very lacking in the African-American or minority community. So what I'm trying to do is say, hey, look, we are stronger together as a group, okay? So when we come together, it's not about the race of the individual trying to outshine or trying to stand out. The fiber lies within the strength of the entire group. So if the group is successful, then we all can share and partake into the American dream. So I think that those things need to be brought to the forefront to where we become less competitive as an individual. But when we look at North Lake Charles, when we look at our communities that are diversely challenged in many different ways, we see each other and we stand as a whole, as a group, and represent ourselves accordingly.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Adrian, would you like to weigh in on that?
Absolutely. Again, I tend to be a little iconoclastic on some of these things. Having been an entrepreneur and still is in my personal life, I think we have to go back to the why. Why was it even necessary for set-asides? Why was it necessary for minority programs of any sort? And the why is because they didn't have access. There was be very candid with you, sometimes you might call it a good old boy network or a closed system where they went to the persons they were always comfortable with dealing with. And we were oftentimes not part of that circle. So the why of the set-asides is because we were not able to have access and the opportunity to participate in the contracting and the bids and so forth. And then also, just to follow up on something that Mr. Senegal said, which is very true, knowledge is very important. Knowledge is very important. And if we want to participate, we've got to be at the table to understand and get the information that is needed. Entrepreneurship can be a very lonely vocation. When you're out there, sometimes you think you're the only one that's doing this. You're the only one that nobody else gets it. And I work with a lot of business owners some of them who have good jobs and walking away from it. And sometimes family and friends who mean well don't understand or don't get it. Well, why are you going to walk away from the great job you have? But that entrepreneur itch is something that's difficult to explain. So I do a peer-to-peer roundtable, just had a virtual meeting last night with a group of entrepreneurs, and it's amazing when you get them together, like-minded entrepreneurs from different businesses, they begin to realize that, okay, I'm not in this by myself. There is someone else who understands my struggles. And so there's a community that develops around that. But I think that also, let me say this, there's a lot of programming that have come down. And what happens over the years, I've seen this happen, people get a bit cynical about it. Say, well, here's another program. I'm going to another meeting. At the end of the day, what's the payoff? You know, am I going to get any business out of this? Now, of course, you can't guarantee that, but what I try to encourage them is say, you've got to at least be at the table to get the information. And yes, sometimes it looks like you're going to this, you're going to that, but don't give someone the excuse to say that, well, you weren't listed over here, that's why we didn't know about you. So you have to be constantly marketing yourself, positioning yourself. And yes, it's not easy, it's frustrating, but entrepreneurs understand that. But I think in our programming, we have to understand that let's not just do another program and let's not just have a conversation like this and talk about things. And then tomorrow, what has changed?
Absolutely.
You bet. You bet. You bet. And you know, gentlemen, that I take this to make a comment just from my perspective. I've been fortunate. I've been in public policy. I've been on the industrial side and also a business owner myself. And I will tell you that much like the life cycles of our own lives and the life cycle of a community, that pain and conflict and challenge is inevitable in our lives. And I don't think we get away without that. The difference is that but you don't have to suffer. You know, pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional. So we don't have to accept the narrative that others are trying to define for the minority community. And when I say the minority community, it's much broader than just the Black community now, or African American community. I think that there is a growing presence of Brown, Hispanic, Latin American, and Caribbean personnel. There is a growing presence of Middle Easterners. There is a growing presence of Asian and Pacific Islanders. So really the dynamic is changing, you know, and with that, the challenges should be getting easier. But as it turns out, there's two things that is critical to business, I think, and that is, one, do you have access to capital? Two, do you have a competent service line? And do you know your business? And what I've seen in my career sometimes is that we have people that are great bakers, or we have people that are great mechanics, or we have people that know air conditioning, or know even the IT, but they don't have the entrepreneurial frame of reference to be able to bring that product to compete on the open market. So in our time remaining, do you think that Blacks and whites, or I should say minorities, and the opposing white community, do they look at entrepreneurship differently? And Adrian, I'll start with you.
Well, I don't know that they view it differently. What I will say, and what I say to clients, I'm not a dream killer. I never tell someone they have a horrible idea. I do try to give them reality therapy sometimes, see how robustly have they thought through whatever business that they're proposing to start. But the access to capital is one part of it, but also you have to run a business like a business. And I'll be very candid with clients. I don't care what their stripe is. If you're okay with operating out of the quote unquote trunk of your car, then that's the level you're going to remain at. But if you want contracts, if you want to do businesses and have credibility, then you've got to file taxes, whether you like it or not. You've got to keep your books. You can't mix business and personal funds together. So some basic fundamentals from a managerial standpoint that sometimes businesses in general, I won't say minority business more so, but businesses in general missed the boat on. So we try to walk them through a constructive process to say, here's how you operate your business. I see John has joined us. He can certainly talk about the financial side and the cash flow, the big proponent of cash flow. I say you need to understand what your cash flow is. And if you don't have an accountant, you need to understand, you need to know your numbers. You need to know your numbers. However you manage that, you need to understand your numbers, because a lot of good businesses are going out of business because they haven't managed their numbers properly.
Very good. Mark?
We can get the whole marketing piece too, but that's where I'll stop.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very, very good point, by both of you gentlemen. And like I said, I just refer, I guess my motto and the thing that I'm beating is you're only as strong as your team. And I think a lot of times, when we think that every dart that stick to the wall, that you throw at the wall is going to stick. Let's just be frank and honest. Every startup business is not going to be successful. Most of the time, the average businessman don't really strike the business that really becomes successful until after the third attempt. So I think that, when you're dealing with people that coming from disadvantaged backgrounds and have limited opportunities, they're even more fragile trying to pursue business, because one strike could mean the end of the game for them. So if the climate is so, and we know that we're dealing with people that are coming with these different challenges and are going to have a difficult time because of the communities that they're trying to serve are not really, doesn't have a behavior pattern that circulates money within the community, is also more challenging. So knowing that, having that support system is even more critical. Having the group of people sharing information and sharing access to information and communicating on all levels as best as they can gives that entrepreneur the confidence to move forward. Because to be honest with you, what I've noticed, the fine line between those that are successful and unsuccessful is the mere fact that those that are successful believe that they will be. And the reason why it a lot of times have to do with a mentor, a mentality that they have, and also knowing that if they do fall, they're not going to hit the bottom. There's going to be somewhere a safety net where they can come back up the ladder and try it again. And I think when you're looking at other communities, where white communities or dominant communities or majority communities, even if you're talking about different groups of Asians or people that have different Indian backgrounds that are very good in different networks of business, whether it be hotel chains, gas stations, restaurants, they practice group economics. They understand that there's a safety net. And that systematic approach and knowing that gives their entrepreneurs the free ability to go out and pursue, knowing that if it fails, it's not going to be the end game. So again, I just want to let people know how critical that is when you look at these other people that come to America being very successful. They're not doing it as an individual alone. They're doing it as a group.
And it's a process.
Yeah, can I just drop one more thing and what Mr. Senegal is saying, which is so very, very, very true. We as a Black community must do a better job of supporting our own. We just simply must do a better job of supporting our own Black-owned businesses. I'll just put a pin on that for right now.
Well, that's very good. Gentlemen, I think you make very compelling points. I think that we have been joined by our third colleague, Mr. Donald Walker, I think has been added to the lineup. Mr. Walker, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning. Sorry for my lateness.
Very good. Matter of fact, I appreciate you being fashionably late with us, but you are good. Very nice.
He's going to bring us home now.
Yeah. Well, you always need a home run hitter, don't you? Honestly, let's just say this, that your chairman designed it for this very reason. He actually planned it, so I'll take credit.
Well, it's all planned,
Donald,
okay.
But with our time remaining, and thank you so much for joining us, because we got an all-star lineup here that we've had very compelling discussions. But why don't you wrap it up for us, Donald, as far as in the last 4 or 5 minutes give us the state of the state perception of where you are, and what do you think needs to happen in this environment to succeed? I think that would be a good summary question for you.
Again, sorry for my tardiness, but I did catch a little bit of what everyone was saying, and I probably would agree with 100% what everyone said, and probably just touch again on some of those key points. The one I want to start with is the last item that Adrian brought up, and that is we have to do a better job of supporting each other in business. If we just do that, if we just try, and it's going to take a little extra effort. It's not always going to be just an easy element. Sometimes to this to work, it's going to take a little bit effort. Even from my standpoint, I find myself, calling on others initially because I've had that relationship, whatever the case may be. But I got to sometimes step back and sort of say, hey, look, there may be someone else new, starting out, have the abilities and skills, and it may not always necessarily be the cheapest. Again, cost, and not going to get into those elements but let's face it, for a small business, our costs are higher, okay? And so we, economy of scales does not necessarily work for small businesses. So we can't always just say, oh, I'm looking for the cheapest price. That's not always going to be there. And when we're saying cheapest price, we're still looking for quality. So, quality, there's a premium cost sometimes that comes with quality. But if we really take a little extra effort to try to work with one another, we can get the cost down, and we can become more competitive and so forth. So it will take an extra effort. As Mark said, communication. We have to really be able to communicate with each other. Because sometimes someone may find out about an opportunity and we may say, oh, it's good for us, and then we sort of leave it. We have to find ways to find out maybe there's someone else who's in a position to take on that contract or be engaged in that situation and so forth. So networking is very important. And really true, I wish we had more networking opportunities in the Black community. Right now, it may be a little difficult with everything else going on and so forth, but we need to find ways where we can, come together. I remember, growing up in New Orleans and so forth, and there would be different organizations, and it's similar to what the chamber does with its monthly meeting, bring your business card, meet and greet kind of thing. But some of those times we may need that just for Black-owned businesses to do some meet and greet, come together, and so forth. And I'm old school in that respect concerning business cards. Every business owner needs a business card. It's great to have a website and social media and all those items and so forth. But having an old-fashioned business card is key and important because you just never know. There we go, Mr. and usually I have some in my pocket. I just don't have it in my pocket, but I'm at my office, and there's about 3 locations in my office where you can pick up one of my business cards. But always make sure to have the business card because you just never know who you're going to run into who may have a business opportunity, and they may not have it directly. It may be a person who knows kind of thing. So networking and just letting everyone know what you do. I mean, I have to admit, there's some businesses out there who I know they're in business, but truthfully, I can't tell you exactly
what they do.
All right. And who is their potential customer? Because we know everyone is not a potential customer, but we have to be able to identify what you do, and then also we can figure out who is your potential customer. So,
Donald, thank you so much, sir. Yeah. Matter of fact, that it is regrettable that we're out of time, but I think that the narrative, I mean, we have, it's been a pleasure to sit on the panel with you. I mean, truly all-star lineup here, and it seems like we're just getting started on the issues, if you will. But I think that what we've seen, that risk management, or the fear of risk, fear of failure, communication, networking, and just the fundamental help of networking among ourselves. We have to do that and continue that message. But gentlemen, I think in these days of time, these are the kind of narratives that I think we need to have and need to continue. And I think that the chamber is very much in tune to that, because they are missioned to carry the message, promote ideals, and to quite frankly advise. So, George, I don't know if you're out there, but I want to give a thanks to all of my panelists, Mr. Walker, Mr. Senegal, and of course the ever-present but never duplicated Mr. Wallace, you know, and his continued good work at the Lake Charles, at the incubator, if you will.
And can I just say one thing since you called my name again?
Yeah.
I just want to offer, you know, the services that we provide, that I'm involved in. Many of them are mobile and portable. And so to Mr. Senegal and the work he's doing there, I'm more than willing to come out there as you might need me. Everything doesn't have to happen here at the Seed Center. A lot of it does, but I'm available. So consider me a resource. John and I work together on a variety of things. So I just want to put that out there also. Thank you.
All right, sounds good.
Well, Ernie, thank you very much for being our moderator for this panel. Mr. Ernie Broussard, Mr. Adrian Wallace, Mr. Mark Senegal, and Mr. John Walker for being on our panel about entrepreneurship. And we want to thank all of you for joining today. Please send your comments to the Alliance. You can go on our website. You can send them to me or to Eric Cormier. And then join us on August the 5th at 10 a.m. when we'll be discussing employment and criminal justice reform. You can visit the Alliance website to register. That's allianceswla.org. So on behalf of Eric Cormier, our Vice President of Policy and Strategic Development for the Alliance, I'm George Swift, thanking you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.